Welcome to another episode of J Inclusive. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, and set your notifications on so you are alerted every time I
Can a
upload.
relationship between two bottoms or two tops work?
Well, I just think, say if you had a qualification in like mechanics and then you had a qualification in like plumbing, like if you've got the equipment to do both, why don't you? So I just feel like everyone should just be a bit versed. Like,
I've got irritable bowel syndrome, all right? I am not gonna bottom unless I found someone I love and trust, all right?
As I was doing a little research on this topic, I came across a couple who were in a monogamous relationship for 12 years. And guess what? They are both bottoms, and they are even married. No open relationship, no occasional threesomes, just two bottoms. And according to them, bottoms really know how to please each other because they know what each other enjoys. According to gay erotica author P.B. Breckenridge, there's also growing awareness that terms like top and bottom are nowhere near specific enough. The assumption is that tops are dominant and bottoms are submissive, but this isn't always true, and these assumptions can get in the way of the dynamics conducive to a truly magical sexual encounter. Even with two bottoms, one can be more dominant than the other. Needs can definitely be met, but we must be brutally honest. The terms top and bottom need not convey any sort of dominance or submission. They can merely mean that one person is giving pleasure and the other is receiving it. With that definition expanded, sex can mean almost anything, and bottom-bottom couples can find plenty of ways to entertain themselves. One of the advantages of being gay is that we don't have to be bound by rigid, stereotypical roles. Sometimes you meet a guy at the club and talk to him all night. Sometimes you're out with friends or out running errands and you meet a handsome stranger. Sometimes you don't know what someone's sexual role is before your first conversation or first date. When there are feminine tops, masculine bottoms, verse men, sides, and everything in between. Since we don't have a predefined template for how our relationship should be structured like our straight counterparts do, we have the freedom and flexibility to create and shape our relationships based on our own desires, preferences, and strengths. What's concerning is that we often categorize our relationships and sexual roles through a rigid, binary lens, one that not only limits our potential, but also significantly narrows our dating pool. Think about it this way. According to NPR, 7.6% of U.S. adults now identify as part of the LGBTQ community. Gay men share this percentage with lesbians, bisexuals, and transgender individuals, meaning the pool of potential dating prospects is already limited. Now, when we screen potential partners for compatibility, we introduce even more dichotomies to the equation. There are those men who are openly gay as opposed to DL or closeted men. Then you have positive men versus those who are negative, those who favor monogamy versus those who desire open relationships or polyamory. You have masculine versus feminine guys, and for some of us, no fats, no light skins, no dark skins, no bald men, men who don't meet what we deem to be of financial stability. If you're a bottom, you shouldn't be any taller than 5'8". Yes, I have a friend who's a top who will not date bottoms taller than that. You have to be fat where it matters, but slim everywhere else. If you're a top, you must be a certain height, have tattoos, or be packing something that's 11 inches long and thick. Because of our stigmatized identities, gay men have higher rates of mental illness and addiction. So now those factors are thrown into the equation as well. We further narrow our dating prospects by dividing them into top or bottom. Then we reinforce stereotypical meanings of what it means to be a top or a bottom, when in reality, both roles are complex. One of those complexities is that a bottom who tops every once in a blue moon does not make them verse or a top, and the same can be said for a top who may bottom on occasion. These are all factors we take into consideration when determining whether a particular dating prospect would make a good match. And with every dichotomy we add to the mix, the available dating pool continues to shrink, especially if you live in a state with a small LGBT population. This kind of categorization can lead us to treat each other harshly and with judgment, dividing people into rigid labels of good or bad, when in reality, we should be more supportive and affirming of members within our own community. What I'm trying to convey is that while it's important to have personal standards when selecting an ideal partner, we should also be mindful of not imposing an overwhelming number of restrictions. Doing so can drastically reduce our chances of finding a meaningful connection. The significance of these preferences will vary from person to person, but I encourage you to reflect on whether the pursuit of rigid ideals is limiting your dating life and creating unnecessary divisions that may be preventing you from exploring deeper possibilities. Consider how far each of you is willing to go in order to meet one another's needs. Some compromises may be necessary, and you might even find that these adjustments bring new depth to your relationship. If you find yourself resistant to occasionally taking a more dominant role, reflect on what specifically is causing that hesitation. There may be an underlying psychological barrier that, once addressed, could change your perspective. Additionally, a variety of adult toys, some highly realistic if you're willing to invest, can be incorporated into your intimate experiences to help bridge the gap left by the absence of an insertive partner. Exploring creative ways to keep things exciting in the bedroom, such as role-playing and other forms of intimacy, can be just as fulfilling. And many aspects of queer intimacy don't require penetration at all. Ultimately, you'll need to assess how much sexual positioning influences your long-term relationship satisfaction. If you're someone who thrives on frequent and intense penetrative experiences, a monogamous relationship with a partner who shares the same preference may not be the best fit for you. I understand that some bottoms may not enjoy topping because they derive greater pleasure or emotional fulfillment from the receptive role. For many, this position fosters a sense of vulnerability and deep intimacy that they don't associate with being dominant. This preference can stem from personal comfort, body image concerns, or even feelings of insecurity about their ability to pleasure another bottom. Saying that two bottoms could never have a successful monogamous relationship is an overstatement. If you meet someone who is perfect for you in every way except for the fact that he won't penetrate you, and alternative forms of intimacy don't appeal to you, would you walk away without hesitation? Would you dismiss the possibilities and return to the dating scene, which, based on what I've heard from friends and others, isn't exactly overflowing
Does
with great
anybody have a
options?
question for AJ? Where do you get your shoes from?
Sheen,
Okay.
$26. Yeah, and saying they're proud. Yeah.
So, what made you pop your balloon?
What?
What made you pop your balloon?
Comment, honestly. It was the Sheen comment. Other than that, I fuck with your fit. But yeah, it would be the shoes or the bag for me. Like, I don't like a nigga that holds bags.
Okay.
Yikes. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all.
You consider him your type?
No,
Anything in particular, or?
it's the stance.
It definitely is. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Remember the bottom couple I mentioned earlier? Well, one of them told Mel Magazine, "I'm submissive, and many assume that means I can only be a bottom. But what truly satisfies me is the pleasure I give my husband. Sometimes that means taking a pill or using a toy, but at the end of the day, what gets me off is hearing him moan in pleasure." In relationships between two tops, conflicts over dominance may arise. However, sometimes easing up on that dominance can create an environment where trust, curiosity, and desire build, leading to greater openness to vulnerability and sexual exploration. I'll never forget when I first came out, my boyfriend at the time introduced me to his friend and his partner. As a young and inexperienced gay man, I later asked him in private who was the top and who was the bottom. After he quickly checked me for even asking, because, really, why would their roles in the bedroom matter to me? He explained that they were both tops who had been in a committed monogamous relationship for quite some time. There's no denying that sexuality is a significant part of a relationship for many people. Just like in bottom-bottom couples, communication about needs and desires is essential. Relationships require compromise, and exploring the idea of switching roles occasionally could be worth discussing. If there's strong resistance to that idea, it might be helpful to have a conversation about what being a top means to each of you, as well as any concerns or reservations about bottoming. Sometimes the issue is simply a lack of understanding or misconceptions about what switching entails. Other times, it can go much deeper, touching on internalized homophobia, views on masculinity, fear of losing control, or issues with vulnerability and trust. By addressing these concerns together, you may be able to overcome psychological barriers and deepen your sexual connection. Talk openly about your fantasies and bring them to life together. Incorporate elements like erotic roleplay, adult toys, or even something as simple as teasing and edging to heighten arousal and keep things exciting. Exploring different forms of intimacy that don't rely on intercourse can add variety and deepen your connection. While it may be a controversial topic, some couples in these situations have found success by establishing relationship agreements that allow for outside encounters with partners of the opposite sexual role, or by introducing a third person into their intimate dynamic. If this is something you consider, it's essential to be clear about your values regarding monogamy versus non-monogamy. Maintain open communication with your partner and check in regularly to ensure that any arrangement remains fulfilling for both of you. It's also crucial to recognize the potential risks of stepping outside the relationship, including concerns about sexual health and the possibility of emotional attachments that could disrupt your bond. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that you change your sexual preferences in the name of love. Rather, I'm encouraging you to consider your options carefully. If you find yourself in a situation like this, don't be too quick to walk away. The key takeaway is that sharing the same sexual role isn't an insurmountable obstacle or an automatic deal breaker. It only becomes one if you allow it to be. Like any strong relationship, success ultimately comes down to communication, exploration, and a willingness to work together to meet each other's needs.
Can a relationship work with two tops? The simple answer? Yeah. And I know that sounds crazy, and you probably don't believe me, but if you don't, stick around and watch the video. In case you guys don't know who I am, my name is Danny. I'm a self-esteem and love coach. I work with gay and bisexual men on all matters of relationships, dating, self-esteem, building self-confidence. And if you want to learn more about me, if you want to tune in to the Deep Penetration podcast, I would highly recommend clicking the link in my bio. All my information is there. I also have a free gift for you in that link. Okay, let's get to the nitty-gritty of it. You are probably thinking that I am absolutely crazy for saying that a relationship can work with two tops, but the reality is it can. Every relationship is subjective. Therefore, the structure of that relationship is completely dependent on the two people that are involved in that relationship. Or three or four, depends on your type of relationship. The question is, how do you make it work? Well, there are many different forms of intimacy, right? It doesn't necessarily just have to be penetration. It can just be an oral relationship. And a lot of couples make that work. If that doesn't work for that couple, there are other things that they can utilize, like different toys or stimulating each other's body through different types of acts, like tantric stimulation. For some people, a relationship is more than just the sexual element or the sexual aspect of it. And it's hard to believe when you're talking about relationships within the LGBTQ plus community, because I think that there's been so much emphasis on sex being such an important part of a relationship. And I'm not saying that it's not an important part of a relationship, because I do believe that having a sexual relationship with your partner is what keeps your relationship a romantic relationship opposed to a platonic relationship. But once again, the definition of that relationship is based on those individuals that are involved in that relationship. So if just having an oral relationship works for that couple, it works for that couple. It may also be possible that a individual who would consider themselves a top is willing to explore a little bit more and maybe transition more into a versatile role where they explore being the receiver in that relationship. It can take time and it can take a building of trust and comfort in order to get to that place, but it's not an impossibility. It is definitely a possibility. The other thing here is that couple may consider opening up their relationship and bringing other people into the relationship in order to satisfy those specific needs that are not being satisfied within the relationship. Many couples decide to open their relationship, and every couple that decides to open the relationship opens it for their own particular reasons. I consider myself somebody to be more of a monogamous individual. I have always been in monogamous relationships, and that's just what I prioritize, right? That is my personal preference, but that does not mean that it is wrong for somebody to want to have an open relationship. As long as there are two consenting adults who are wanting that for their relationship, then it works for them. So if you are two tops that are in a relationship and you are not fully satisfied sexually within that relationship, but you connect deeply with your partner on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level, that might be something you would consider and have a conversation with your partner. If that's the road you don't want to go down and you want to keep the relationship monogamous, the two of you want to keep the relationship monogamous, and there are other things that you can explore, like I talked about earlier, different forms of intimacy, becoming comfortable with different types of stimulation. All of that to say, yes, it is possible for two tops to be in a successful relationship. It's just about the communication factor, the willingness to be open and to try new things, and prioritizing the relationship.
You know I hate sleeping alone. You just